I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago, but all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago.
Hello fellow nerds and crafters. Today I'm going to be making that pearl dice set for my dice box video. I've got these little pearls with no holes in them, and I've just stuffed them full in each one of the dice. I'm also going to use this mylar flake from Temu and this Let's Resin dye called Sky Blue. I wanted to start off with just a little bit because I didn't want to make the dice too dark. However, I went in with a few more drops of blue to get it to a slightly darker blue. And of course, there's cat hairs in all of my stuff, because when you have fur babies, their fur gets everywhere. Once I've got the color I want, I'm going in with just a little bit of this mylar flakes. I wasn't sure if they were going to drop to the bottom or float, or if they would sort of suspend nicely, so I only wanted a little bit and not overpower anything. I wish I had a little spoon or something though, because that was a little bit more difficult than necessary with those tweezers, but I didn't want to add a huge bunch of it by accident. So once I'm satisfied with the sparkle and the color, I'm just going to pour it into my dice mold. Now you can see some marks on my dice mold. It has two D20 spots. One of them has a rip and one of them does not. So my markings were just letting me know which one was the one to use and which one I should avoid using, because my memory is terrible and I always forget. However, this was not the greatest idea. This is just permanent marker and it's on a silicone mold. Silicone mold don't hold permanent marker very well, so later in the video you do see me trying to wipe it away before it gets into my dice and changes the color. I go in with my dotting tool just to move around the pearls a little bit to try and make sure that there's no bubbles stuck in between the pearls anywhere. Once I'm satisfied that all the dice are filled with resin, I'll fill in the other two empty dice slots, which is a regular D4 caltrop and the other D20. You don't want to leave your molds, your dice molds, empty, even if you don't want to fill up all of the dice, or if you don't want all of the dice, you still need to fill them all up because they will warp your dice in the pressure pot if you leave them empty. Lots of poking and prodding and giving it some time for bubbles to rise, just to make sure that I'm not going to be left with an air gap anywhere. I added extra resin, and just before I put the top on is when I realized that that ink around the mold was coming off and I needed to wipe it off before it got into my dice. So once all the cavities are full and I have a little bit of resin on the top of the mold, I'm just going to press them tightly together, put them in my pressure pot, and put a little bit of weight on top of the mold itself to keep the lid on tight, to give me as little flashing as possible. So here are the dice just pulled out of the mold. Then after a couple days, about a week actually, I will go in and I will sand and polish them. So these are Zona papers. I wet all of them except for the last one, and I use Meguiar's Ultimate Compound for my polishing compound. I go through green to blue without polishing compound, and then I start using the polishing compound from pink all the way through to the white. This is why dice are so fun to make and unmold, but this is why they take so long and why handmade dice cost so much, because each dice needs to be sanded this way. Moving on to the color, I mix up this light pink with a little bit of glitter, which is hard to see in the video, and it's very simple. You just smush in the color and wipe it off, and then wipe it off with some alcohol after they've fully dried. So here's some photos. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!